let's talk a bit about Dave Chappelle. His comedy special has sparked a walkout at Netflix, and that's been backed by numerous Netflix stars. Dave Chappelle, for not the first time, has been accused of transphobic hate speech, essentially. Tom, what have you made of these protests?
Very curious, I think. I mean, you see the wave of these in kind of Silicon Valley, these kind of big tech firms, or even in the publishing world, we talked about some of them, where you basically have kind of staff walkouts and almost strike action, but over their own hurt feelings.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about pay, it's not about working conditions, it's about how dare you have published this thing that has upset me. I mean, it's the most
well, Tom, they would say it is about conditions because you've made an unsafe work environment.
Well, this is the thing, because I watched some of the videos from the protest earlier today. Anyone should. It's quite comical, but they're quite openly saying, I mean, I'm not, it's not 100% clear if these people actually work there or if these are people who are just sort of well-wishers. I think, hangers on, people in the sort of activist set and all the rest of it. But there was one of the speeches from one of the organisers said, we're not here because we can't take a joke. We're here because these jokes are taking lives. And you just think, first of all, that means you can't take a joke, doesn't it? But also, it just shows that there's this is a sort of hysteria. I mean, it's a mania. The controversy over Dave Chappelle and his various very brilliant comedy specials that he's had out on Netflix over the course of the past couple of years, the level of outrage that has sustained has been incredible. And you have to remind yourself that what you're talking about here are jokes. I mean, at the beginning of this special, the closer, he makes a joke about being abused as a child and enjoying it.
Yeah.
This man is a provocateur. He's having a laugh. The idea that this is something akin to a sort of hateful, transphobic rally is completely ridiculous. And what you're really just seeing is that this idea that, again, kind of like words of violence, that speech is violence, that a lot of some of the people who have quite significant positions in culture and in these organizations now hold to, it's just completely incompatible with artistic freedom. Yeah. The two cannot exist. And these protesters, as far as I understand it, they're at pains to say, we're not saying that the special should have been pulled down, but effectively what they're saying is we want to make sure this never happens again.
Yeah.
They want to bring through almost like kind of trans sensitivity viewers to make sure that if there's anything which touches on these topics, they're consulted. I mean, it's basically about closing off anyone who might dare want to touch upon these topics in a way that a self-appointed activist set have decided are off limits.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all very strange and very ridiculous, but at the same time, it's the fact that Netflix, interestingly, is starting to cave into it after originally putting up a bit more of a quite robust front, I think tells you where things are going in that respect.
Ella, what do you make of just the scale of the controversy? I mean, it's some people have pointed out on Twitter that it's been in the news for longer than the Afghanistan withdrawal and, various other serious
But also,
issues.
It's gone on for more than one of his programs. I mean, the whole point about his closer, this most recent one that's come out, was that it was addressing the fact that he's had to address this issue again and again and again.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm a great fan of Dave Chappelle. In fact, actually, I think you told me about him, Tom. And since you've told me about him, I've gone to all of his shows and watched as many as I can and watched him. And you know that he actually kind of has told less jokes in this most recent one, has spent more time politically opining about how he is not a transphobe. And, he is very clear about the fact that he doesn't think that people shouldn't have rights and stuff like that. But that how he's pissed off at being told that he can and cannot say certain things. It's a really infantile way of looking at comedy as well, because I remember when I went to see him in, I think it was Camden a number of years ago. It was before the whole trans stuff. And I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure myself and my partner were the only white people in the crowd. And all his jokes were about white people and how awful they were and all this kind of stuff. And, when you got past the uncomfortableness of the fact that he was actually pointing at us a lot of the time and everyone else was laughing at us, it was hilarious. Because you enter into a comedy gig, or when you watch something like that, understanding that you're going to laugh at people and also you might be laughed at yourself. And that's part of the shock factor. It's part of the pushing the boundaries of comedy. And no one seems to be talking about the thin-skinnedness of these small number but very vocal, number of trans activists who are just incapable of being able to laugh at themselves. There is something funny about all the ways in which we live, and nothing should be sacred. In fact, the more you try and make it sacred, the funnier it gets to poke fun at it. And I think thankfully there's lots of people who cave under this. But one of the reasons why Dave Chappelle stands out is because he refuses to cave, and that's why people love him. That's why his show is popular on Netflix, because he's saying what we're all thinking, which is that I should be allowed to make a joke about this. This is not, heresy. What's going on here? And so I think, even though I was slightly disappointed in the lack of jokes, the most recent one, it's essential watching for everyone because it gives a rare glimpse of bravery in a debate around, gender ideology that is so lacking of courage at the moment.
Yeah. No, and also it's just, he comes from a particular sort of strain of comedy, which puts a lot of emphasis on kind of like laughing at difference as a byproduct that kind of brings people together. It's just the kind of absurdities of everyone's lives, whether you're talking about stereotypes, this, that, and the third, all of that is just being really kind of shut down. And also just a kind of sense in which you can just laugh at things, because that's the problem with the sort of woke assault on culture at the moment, is the fact that what it basically comes down to is that anything in art and culture, particularly anything popular, must say the correct thing. You can't toy around with things. You can't piss around with things. You must deliver the message in one way, shape or form. And that, artistic freedom can't survive that. And I think the great thing about Dave Chappelle, how long this will go on for, I don't know, is because he's so famous and because he's so brilliant and because he's kind of uncancelable and because he has this attitude, which is that he's always said it quite explicitly in previous specials, I can't help but make these jokes precisely because people have told me that I cannot make them, that he just very naturally bust through all this stuff. But given the kind of response from Netflix, given the sort of climb down, how uncancelable can he be? Or at least someone like him could be in the future. It definitely doesn't bode well for any of that.